Hey, what's up, lightboltjoe here. Today we're going to discuss the 2014 horror film Deliver Us from Evil. 2 hours long, starring Eric Bana, Edgar Ramirez, Olivia Munn. Joe McHale is in this as well, and it's interesting watching Joe McHale and Olivia Munn do horror because I've never seen them do it before. So I'm all for it. I want more horror films for them. So that's pretty cool. And Joe, he does comedy constantly, so it was nice seeing something different. And Olivia, I've seen just be a badass HBIC in majority of the films I've seen her in. So in regards to action and taking charge and things like that. She's in one of my favorite Christmas films, Off a Christmas Party. So it's just funny watching them in different types of projects because I never thought to see them in those types of roles. So it's interesting. I thought Eric and Edgar did a great job working together to fight the evil. So I'm very curious how this book is because the book that this movie is based on, because this movie was awesome. I had low expectations for this, and this was it. This was incredible. It brought together two different types of worlds to have an exorcism at the precinct in the Bronx at the very end, and I was very all for it. We get it. We get backstory. We get how this three-person painting team, who are ex-Marines, got possessed back in when they were serving in Iraq, and things, right? So stuff. Why is this other woman now throwing her child over the moat at the Bronx Zoo's lion exhibit? Like things, heavy possession things, but then like life things, like questioning, like how did you lose your faith, and maybe you're the hand of God kind of a thing. And it's just it's a conversation film that I didn't think I ever needed to see. Um, and I'm glad I did because it brings in these different types of conversations in regards to what do you do in certain situations, what's the betterment for yourself, what's your purpose, do you have a purpose, why can you hear things when other people can't, things. So we're talking about clairvoyancy, we're talking about radar, if you will, as it's referenced a few times. But then on the flip side of a drug addict turned priest, how did that story go, and how does the two of them working together equate to using their two different talents, their two different ways of doing things, joining forces to get rid of this evil entity that's been taking over in regards to the Bronx. So it was a very team building kind of moment, and it did one of my absolute favorite camera tricks where the camera pans in and zooms out at the same time. Freak the freak out. I also loved that the doors break on through was blasting throughout this entirety of this, and it was a whole metaphor of breaking through to the other side. Let the demon through, let them in, but you have to invite them in. So it was very neat having the trying to find the wife and daughter at the end. That was emotional. The whole child murderer backstory of Eric's character and why he still feels guilty after all these years. Like, there was a lot of heavy stuff in this that I didn't expect. But like I said, I didn't have any high expectations for this. I was just like, oh, it's a horror film, I'll watch it. This was a great horror film. This was a great psychological but then also practical horror film, and getting rid of the entity. You don't see normally a full exorcism happen with then the entity actually leaving and the person then being kind of semi-okay. You normally see them either being, taken out along the way, or, not surviving, and but to see a full completed exorcism with witnesses in a precinct, very interesting, very different. I've never seen that before. But it brought up different kinds of conversations, different questioning aspects that I'm not, how do I word this? I've thought of things before, certain conversations that they've had before, but not to the extent in a two-person conversation. Most of my conversations were with myself, so I'm not getting a dual-sided perspective. This had dual-sided perspective. You have that ex-drug addict turned priest perspective, and then you have the cop who had to save his mother from a meth head. That's where the turning point of losing the faith was, and then how can you regain it? Should you regain it? Do you need to regain it? Things. Very interesting things of conversation were happening throughout this. I'm very impressed. Very impressed with this. There was something else I wanted to say. What the hell else was it? Backstory, Get a 7-month epilogue. That was neat. Things were explained throughout. I don't remember. There was something else I wanted to say about the project that I noticed. Life stuff. And I can't remember it now. Guess it wasn't that important if I can't remember what the hell I was going to say. So, 2014's horror film, Deliver Us from Evil. Oh, wait, it was just there. Oh, okay, I got it. Oh, I got it. So, the main point of this is the evil hijacked the 3 Marines from Iraq, right? But then the pictures they took was Latin written around Persian characters, which correspond to then, prior to that, Sumerian culture, right? Because that was Sumerian ancient people prior to Persia, which we now reference as the Middle East. So it was neat having the hybrid stuff correlate to the possessed then going out into America from the Middle East, traveling back, because then you had the hybrid of priest and cop coming together to fight the hybrid evil. So what I like about that is that there's a lot of hybrid gods and goddesses in regards to the Ptolemaic Empire, because once Alexander the Great's empire, which was Macedonian / Greco, technically, once that broke apart after Alexander was buried alive, and there's a lot of conversation about that because he was like in a comatose state, and like, was he actually dead or was he actually still alive and they just buried him in the tomb, still alive? Where's his body? Because it was stolen. Things, right? There's so much interesting and amazing conspiracy in regards to what in the hell happened, what in the Hades happened to Alexander's body after he died. No one can explain this, or those who can explain it won't explain it. And I want to know, before I die, I want to know where his body is, because it's somewhere. It's got to be in somebody's house, somewhere, someone's castle, somewhere. Anyway, when Ptolemy was a general of Alexander's empire, he was given the Egypt chunk of the Alexandrian Empire to then rule. So he then became the first Greco pharaoh, Cleopatra VII, who we all are well familiar with in regards to being Cleopatra, right? Cleopatra of Egypt. She's not technically Egyptian. She's actually a Macedonian. She's from that Ptolemaic bloodline. She's actually a Macedonian. So once that Ptolemaic Empire hybrid lived culturally for many centuries with Egypt, new gods and goddesses were created. Like the quiet god, the child god, is this little kid who always goes like this, but he's referencing, and we know this is a shh sign, right? But that particular statue, you see it all over the place in hieroglyphs and things like that. That's actually referencing a child god, one of the forgotten gods, if you will. But he was, and I can't remember his full name, unfortunately, but he's a hybrid god. That's one example. So having hybrid gods and goddesses come together, technically Roman Greco gods and goddesses are all hybrid, right? Because you have Jupiter, but Jupiter's also Zeus. Hybrid. Poseidon is Neptune. Hybrid. So it's interesting. It's very interesting when the different personalities come about together. It's interesting when one culture mixes with another culture to create something brand spanking new. Hybrid gods. So to have this hybrid thing going on in regards to why is there Latin writing with Persian text, then translating that evil entity back to the Americas, and then having the hybrid cop with the hybrid priest coming together to do an exorcism in the precinct, bro, it was mind-blowing. It just brought me back to ancient times, as I'm reliving the past lives, obviously. But it brought me to all those stories of the Alexandrian Empire, the Ptolemaic Empire, things of that nature. Hybrid. Very interesting. Just because one thing might end doesn't mean it can't be reinvented, can't take a new life. Just because one thing ends doesn't mean it's not going to go away forever. It can come back in other forms. And that's what's interesting about this. So, rounding about to the point of my long story. When you're facing evil, right? Primary evil, secondary evil, as the priest goes over. Edgar does a great job with his monologues, man. Great job. When you're yelling at it in Spanish, when you're yelling at it in Latin and you're saying the prayers, right? The Christian prayers in Latin, does it actually affect all forms of evil? Is it the matter of how you say it rather than what you're saying? Is it that certain languages actually affect certain entities? Or does it matter that some entities could be older than language in general? Would any language actually harm them? Or is it more of a, like I said before, is it a matter of how you say it and the gumption behind how you say it, the projection of begone evil? If you're saying it in the name of someone, does it matter to that entity if that entity is older than that someone? I don't think it matters. I think it's interesting in regards to some can be older, some can be new. One of the age old, just because something is bad doesn't mean it was always bad, and just because something was good doesn't mean it was always good. So could have changed. Character development on both sides. What became a villain? What became a hero? Anything can happen. Interesting. That's the journey. So I think it was interesting watching these two, a priest and a cop, sounds like the beginning of a bad joke, come together to then say these words, which were all spoken in English, Spanish, and Latin. Does it matter? Or is it the fact that they came together and had the gumption to then get the thing out? I don't know. It's a very interesting duality type of conversation because anything is possible in regards to that demonology that we hear so much about. In regards to these types of exorcism stories, in regards to these exorcism kind of films. I'm very curious how this book actually is. My mouth is dry. I've talked for a while. So, 2014's Deliver Us from Evil. Awesome film, obviously, or else I wouldn't be talking this long. On to the next review. Mahalo.